And I'm live. Well, it's over. The Blue Jays are not World Series champions, but damn, they came as close as you can possibly come without winning. And heck, heck, heck of a season. Unbelievable. Uh, you're going to take down the giant, you got to slay it. And the Blue Jays just couldn't slay the giant. That is the LA Dodgers, now two-time defending champion LA Dodgers. We'll see if anyone comes online. I imagine there's a lot of content out there right now, a lot of competing narratives. I am going to say, I can't imagine I'm the only one who's glad it's over. You know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster going down 2 games to none against Seattle, then fighting their way back in that series. Being down 2-0, then being down 3-2, just to get to the World Series, and then to be that close, to be up 3-2 against the Dodgers with 2 chances at home, and they couldn't close it out. That's a tough pill to swallow. But I've got to say this: the future looks bright for the Blue Jays. The future looks incredibly bright for the Blue Jays. Just in terms, for next season and for years beyond. For next year specifically, the rotation looks solid. They'll have Trey Savage for the whole year. We'll see if he can replicate what he did in the postseason and at the end of 2025. Can he replicate that into all of 2026? He will still be a rookie. He didn't play enough games during the 2025 regular season to lose his rookie status. So he will be a rookie in 2025, 2026. And I would have to, he's probably an early favorite for rookie of the year. Who knows? He might even be up for the Cy Young next year, given the way he pitched under incredibly high pressure. Does he need the pressure? Can he do it, in the dog days of summer when the games don't necessarily mean as much? I think he can. They'll have him, they'll have Gossman, they'll have Lauer for the whole year. They'll have Barrios. There's 4 pitchers right there. They only need one other arm, and that could be Bowden Francis, who went down with an injury midway through the 2025 season. Who knows who it will be? They could go out. Maybe they'll re-sign Max Scherzer. I don't know. Perhaps. Will they re-sign Chris Bassett, who did amazing in the postseason? We'll find out. But already under contract, under team control, they have Gaussman, they have Barrios, they have Trey Savage, and they still have Eric Lauer. And they have Hoffman under contract next year. And I'm not going to fault the guy. He pitched a heavy workload, not as heavy a workload as Varland. Varland pitched 15 games in the postseason, 15 or 16, an unbelievable workload from Varland. In terms of had the Jays won, it would have been so difficult to determine who would be the MVP. Who's the MVP for the Blue Jays? Is it Clemens? Is it Vladimir Guerrero? I would give the nod to Vladimir Guerrero just because of what he did both at the plate and defensively. His defensive contributions were massive. There was that play at first where he came off the bag and seeing that the throw was offline from the shortstop, he knew he wasn't going to get the play at first, came off the bag and gunned the guy down at first. Vladimir Guerrero has got to be, if not the best throwing first baseman in all of baseball. He's top 2, top 3. I think he's probably the best throwing first baseman. He's grown so much from that game a couple years ago where he was caught making a base running mistake like Addison Barger did in game 6. and that was heartbreaking. The Jays had the game right there. They had the game right there, runners on second and third, when Jimenez hit that little flare into left field that probably 99 times out of 100 would drop for a nice little Texas leaguer run scoring single, maybe a 2-run scoring single if a guy like Barger gets a good jump, which he was trying to do. But the problem was that Kiki Hernandez, the left fielder for the LA Dodgers, decided of his own volition, apparently, according to the reporting, decided of his own volition to creep in another 15, 20 feet, uh, thinking that if Jimenez was going to hit the ball with power, that it would be to the right side, but anything hit to the left side, he figured would be weak contact, and so he crept in and was able to make an incredible play and caught Barger being a little too aggressive. And sometimes aggression pays, sometimes it doesn't. You know, when it does pay off, everyone cheers and goes, that's because he was aggressive. But, the flip side of aggression is that it can bite you in the backside. There are people watching. So if you want to fill up the live chat, what did you think of the World Series? I think that Yamamoto, the pitcher who closed out the game, pitched game 6 and then closed out game 7, won 3 games in the World Series. To my mind, no brainer. He's the MVP of the World Series. The Jays had their chances against him, even no more so than in that 9th inning. And what a heartbreaking way to lose with Alejandro Kirk, our otherworldly catcher. Guy's done. He's a catcher. You normally don't look at your catcher to be a major contributing force in your offense, and yet Kirk has been. And this Jays team is incredibly well constructed in that during the 2025 season, they didn't have anyone who had a spectacular season. They didn't have a Cal Raleigh. They didn't have a Aaron Judge. They didn't have a Shohei Ohtani. Yeah, they had Vladimir Guerrero hit up in and around 300, drove in 80 plus runs, but nothing earth shattering. Whale has shown up. He said, yeah, who's watching? Sorry, I never watched the game, but I knew it was on the radio playing lightly in the background here. And Whale, of course, is all the way out in British Columbia. And British Columbia has a large number of Blue Jay fans who quite often make the trip down to Washington State, go to Seattle, catch the Jays. Quite often, the Jays playing in Seattle, it would almost be like a home game for them, and that's going back a long ways. I've been following the Jays closely since the early 80s, about 81, 82, when they started to become a competitive team. Of course, in their first incarnation, they were the expansion 1977 Blue Jays with basically a bunch of has-beens and and never were's and guys who were castaways in the expansion draft. And interestingly, I'll throw this out there, in 1977, I was in grade 5 going to Pineland Public School in Burlington, in Ontario. And in my class was a kid whose last name was Cheek. His dad was Tom Cheek. And the Cheek family had settled in Burlington, Ontario. And the Cheek family, there were 2 boys. And I believe that my classmate, who I never really knew, just knew that on opening day, April 1977, when Toronto played the Chicago White Sox at Old Exhibition Stadium, that kid, whatever his name was, I don't even know, Tom Cheek's son, wasn't in class that day. And I remembered that I wanted to kind of connect with him, but I never did. But I wanted to connect with him because he was an American. And I had only just moved back to Canada from Glen Rock, New Jersey, where I'd been living. I'd lived in New York and then New Jersey. We'd moved down to New York when I was not even a year old. What's Whale saying? First ball game that he ever attended was at the Kingdome, the old Kingdome. where the Seattle Mariners used to play before they built. Is it called Safeco Field now? It used to be stadiums, yeah, and it still is in some cases, but you have Yankee Stadium, you have Fenway Park, you have Camden Yards, Baltimore or Oriole Park at Camden Yards. That's the official name of the stadium that the Baltimore Orioles play in. But now with the branding naming rights, everyone knows that when the Toronto facility was first opened, it was called the Sky Dome, opened up in May or June of 1989. Uh, it was Sky Dome, no corporate branding name. It wasn't Rogers Center. Now everything is Comerica Park, Safeco Field, Minute Maid Park, I think is the name of the Houston facility. So often stadiums now, they sell branding rights. The Toronto Maple Leafs play at what is now called Bank of Nova Scotia Place, BNS Place. Um, and I think that's unfortunate, but it's just the way the world operates. Um, First ball game I ever attended myself personally was in Yankee Stadium. And Whale Oil is saying that it's called Princess Auto Stadium in Winnipeg. Yeah, that does sound funny, playing at a place called Princess Auto Stadium. The Chicago Bears of the NFL, they used to play at Soldier Field. And I know that there's, been War Memorial Stadium. I don't remember where that was from. So the old George Carlin did a great routine many years ago about comparing the 18th, or rather 19th century pastoral game of baseball to the modern technological 20th century conflict known as football. Yeah, in football is rigidly timed. Uh, 4 quarters long, 15 minutes each, and the game will end. Even if the score is still tied, we'll go to overtime. It could even be sudden death overtime. In baseball, we don't know when the game will end. We might even have extra innings. In football, you play on a stadium, on a gridiron, sometimes called War Memorial Stadium. In baseball, you play in a park, on a diamond. Football is all about downs. What down is it? Is it first down? Is it second down? Baseball is all about ups. Are you up? I'm not up. Is he up? In football, you can get a penalty for roughing or face masking or roughing the passer. In baseball, you make an error. Oops, I made an error. Uh, in football, the object of the game is for the quarterback, otherwise known as the field general, to launch an aerial assault the opposing team's defenses while punctuated with a punishing ground attack. In baseball, the object of the game is to go home. I'm going home. I hope I'm safe at home. Great routine. If you ever want to check it out, George Carlin, just type in baseball, football. I can't do it justice. And yeah, Wales mentioning the fact that hockey used to, and it still is, Boston Garden, which is probably not Boston Garden anymore, but I think it still is Madison Square Garden. It used to be the Forum in Montreal, then it was the Bell Center, and now it's probably something else. Uh, Crazy the way things go. But the one thing that's mainly I've been fixating a lot on the Blue Jays. Following through the playoffs. My interest heightened as we got to the end of the season. But um, yeah, and in terms of my channel, Act One that you're watching now, and I've got a number of people watching, but Wales the only one commenting. And again, don't leave it all to Whale. Don't let him carry the load. What are your thoughts on the World Series? Share them away. Uh, I can deal with the Jays losing. They've got a hell of a team. We'll see what happens next year. As I say, they're gonna have a great rotation. They'll have Vladimir Guerrero back at first. Ernie Clement, who played third base, he should be there all year, and I would imagine that he will become a fixture at the hot corner. The middle infield, second and short, is a bit of a coin flip right now. Jimenez is a slick fielding shortstop and not a bad bat. He hit reasonably well in the postseason after having an injury riddled 2025 season. And he's the better defensive option at shortstop. Bo Bichette, of course, is a free agent. And will the Jays try and sign him? And if they do, will they be looking for him to make a move to second base? And I think Bo Bichette has a chance to be a plus defender at second base, whereas at shortstop, hardest position in the infield. I mean, catcher and shortstop are the hardest positions to play, period. They're the most physically demanding. And Bo Bichette is an average shortstop at best. He's not a plus defender at short, but I think he could be a plus defender at second base. Uh, and Wales asking did the Dodgers last win big? Last year, they beat the New York Yankees in 5 games. They're repeat champions, and prior to that, they won in 2020. I think they've been around, obviously, a lot longer than the Toronto Blue Jays. We only came into existence in 1977. So 11 years younger than I am. We're coming up on this will be, I guess, the 49th season of Blue Jay baseball coming up. And the team has done well. Won the AL East in 85, lost in the ALCS, lost the ALCS to the Kansas City Royals that year. In 87 came painfully close. That was such a heartbreaking year for Blue Jay fans because we lost the last 7 games of the year to drop out of first place, which was taken by the Detroit Tigers. And that was an amazing Blue Jay team, and it included my favorite all time Blue Jay player, Tony Fernandez, who sadly, toward the end of that year, was taken out at second base. I think it was Bill Matlock slid into second base as Tony Fernandez was taking the relay from second to try and complete a double play. And he came across the bag and ranged out into the outfield, and Matlock didn't go anywhere near second base. He was merely fixated, and this is the way you played baseball back in the day, is that when a guy was running from first to second in a double play situation, he went at the second baseman hard to try and take him out. And Tony Fernandez was taken out, and as he came down, he actually broke I think, his elbow. He landed at that time. They didn't have a dirt infield. They just had dirt cutouts at first, second, and third. And around the perimeter of the dirt cutouts was a steel beam just covered by a thin layer of astroturf. And he landed right on that beam and busted his arm. I think it was his elbow. It was crazy. That was 87. 89, they went to the ALC. They won the American League East, and they went to the ALCS and lost. And then again in 1991, they won the East Division, but then they lost in the ALCS, the American League Championship Series, back in that era, back in the 90s and previously. There was no wild card round. There was no divisional series. It was just American League Championship Series, National League Championship Series, and the winner from each would play in the World Series. So, we came so close, 85, 87, didn't quite make the playoffs, didn't quite make it into the ALCS. But then in 89, we did, 91, we did, but couldn't get into the World Series until 1992 when they won the American League East. Then they beat Oakland in the ALCS, went into the World Series 1992, played Atlanta, won in 6 games in Fulton County Stadium, if memory serves, Atlanta. And then the following year, again, they won 93. So they had, for a team that would compare them with the Seattle Mariners. Seattle and Toronto came into the league at the same time, both in the same year, 1977. They are expansion cousins, but Seattle has never been to the World Series, and I think this was their third time in the American League Championship Series, second or third. I think it was the third. And if it was the third, Toronto, we made it in 85, 89, 91, 92, 93, 2015, 2016, and now we've made it again in 2025. So we've 8 times we have been to the American League Championship Series. 3 times we've been to the World Series. We've won 2 World Series. We've done well. And Wales saying that he recalls Joe Carty's jumpy antics in a winning way back when Jay's last one. Yeah, that was 1993. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. And it was only the second time in World Series history that a World Series ended on a game-winning home run. There have been walk-offs before, and a walk-off is when it's the bottom of the ninth and you score the winning run and the game's over. But there's only been twice in the World Series where a home run won the World Series, and that was Bill Mazeroski, however you say that name, and Joe Carter for the Blue Jays in 1993. Those are the only two. But to talk a little bit about my channel, Act One, a Canadian take on news events. My name's Gordy Canuck. It's my internet sobriquet. Real name Gordon Causey, a 59-year-old, born 1966, Canadian Armed Forces veteran. Likes to elbow his way into the crowded digital YouTube space, I put out my thoughts, my views, my opinions on all manner of things. I'm trying to get a little more intentional with the content I put out. I'm starting to pre-record some videos and upload them. I've been talking a lot recently about digital ID, about artificial intelligence, CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. I see this as the emerging full-on beast system. I've had a number of people comment on those videos saying the beast system has been around forever. And that's true. We live in a beastly world. We always have. But we're moving toward an inflection point. We're moving towards a point where the tools available to the oh, to Luciferian powers, the tools they're going to be employing against the great unwashed they're going to go over the top. And to a large degree, I look upon an event like the World Series, and I think of a Roman poet by the name of Juvian, back first, second century, something like that. And he was the one who came up with the famous line about bread and circuses. Just give the people bread, just feed them, and give them a circus, and then you can control them and you can tromp all over them because that's all they want. They just want entertainment and food. And I look at the World Series and I go, there's the circus. We just had our, 7-game, 14-day, 2-week long circus. But as I say, I grew up playing the game. I wasn't particularly good. I was okay. I mean, I was an average player. I could get my bat on the ball, but not a great hitter, not a great fielder. Average, very average baseball player. But I love the game. I love the game because it's so, I don't know. There's a rhythm to it. You get to take a break. You watch hockey, they drop the puck. You don't know whether it's going to be a minute till the next whistle, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. They could go 4 or 5 minutes before a whistle or something happens for a stop and play. Whereas in baseball, the pitcher takes the ball, throws, and then, so you got to build up and then, okay, wait for the next pitch. and then wait for the next pitch, and then wait, one out, two out, three out. Now take a long break, and it's got a very, it's not a perfect rhythm but there's an ebb and flow to the game, and it's also the most numbered. What's the guy's batting average, how many RBIs, how many home runs, what's his on base percentage, what's his OPS, on base plus slugging percentage. And things have gone over the top lately. Now they have a statistic for everything. The pitchers, they measure spin rate. How many rotations, RPMs does the ball have? It's insane the amount of they call it sabermetrics now, a lot of it. Um, anyway, Wales the only one talking. 8 people watching right now as I speak. I used to go to the games down at Old Exhibition Stadium. Loved it at that stadium because there was almost no foul ground. There was as little foul ground as you could have in a stadium. And the bullpens right now, the way it works is the Blue Jay bullpen is in, I believe, in the right field corner of Rogers Place Skydome, and the visitor bullpen is in the left field corner behind the wall in Toronto, in Old Exhibition Stadium. The bullpen was just a bench down the left field line, and the pitchers would warm up. They'd be right in front of you. If you were sitting in the first 4 or 5 rows on the railing, down, past first base, past third base, down the foul lines, the relieving pitchers who were getting warmed up were right in front of you, and they didn't even really have a mound. It was just a ramp. It was just a ramp. And I used to go down to the Blue Jay. What happens in baseball is Thursday is referred to as getaway day. And typically, what will happen is the team coming in to visit. Thursday's the last game of the series, and Thursday's also the home stands. A team will play 7, 8, maybe 9 games in a row at home, then they'll go on the road. And it would typically be on a Friday that their next game would be. So Thursday would be called getaway day. So on getaway day Thursdays, the games would typically start around 12:30 in the afternoon, a day game. And so what I would do in April, May, June when I was in high school is I would go to school in the morning, inform my teachers that you're not going to see me today. Please mark me present, but I'm not here. And my teachers were always good. Let's see. I've got someone named MB, as in like MB, like the code for Manitoba. Congratulations on the Leafs win, Toronto. Did the Leafs play tonight? I wasn't even aware of that. I haven't been following NHL or the NHL or NBA. So let's see. Yesterday, where are the scores? Hurricanes lost to the Bruins. The Jets beat the Penguins. The Flames lost to the Preds. The Avalanche lost to the Sharks. Stars lost to the Panthers. The Canadiens beat the Ottawa Senators. The Wild beat the Canucks. The Blue Jackets beat the Blues. The Sabres beat the Capitals. And the Toronto Maple Leafs won their game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Well, right now, Toronto is a 500 team. They've won 6 and they've lost 6. One of those losses was in overtime, but they're a 500 team. To my way of thinking, when you lose, you lose. I hate in the NHL, they have what I refer to as the loser point. And that is if you lose a game in overtime or a shootout, well, we'll still give you a point, even though you lost. And I don't like that. I would actually like to see the NHL go to a system wherein if you win during regulation, you get 3 points. If you lose in regulation, you get 0. You lost. Losers don't get anything. old school. And then if you win in overtime, okay, you won, but it was in overtime, and now they're playing 3-on-3 instead of a real hockey game. So you won those. So we're going to give you 2 points. And if you lose in overtime, zero. You don't get anything. And then finally, if you win in a shootout, well, this isn't even hockey anymore. It's a skills competition. We'll give you a point because you won the game. But if you lose, you get zero. And I think a system like that would really encourage teams to try and win in regulation. They would pull everything out to try and win the game in regulation. Whereas now, what I think can happen is when the score's tied 4-all with just 3-4 minutes left in the game, both teams are simply trying not to make a mistake because okay, well, if we can send it to overtime, we're guaranteed a point. Now there would be urgency, well, if we don't win in regulation, the best we can get is two. And if we don't win in overtime, then the best we can get is 1 point. So let's try and win in regulation. Uh, and Whale Oil's writing, so, oh, yes, that's who we beat. The Leafs beat Philly. Let's see. Anyway, so I'll wrap up. Jays won, or Jays won. The Jays lost, but they still winning season. Incredible winning season. Most wins in the American League. An incredible run. I think they're incredibly well set up for next year. As I say, they're going to have Addison Barger all year. I would stick him in right field. They'll have Dalton Varsho. Hopefully, he can stay healthy the whole year. He hit 20 home runs this year, but played in less than half of the games. So if he's able to stay healthy for a full season and hits at the same rate he did this year, we could be looking at 40 plus home runs. And then Anthony Santander. I hate that name. I always want to say Santander. Anthony Santander, who was the big a big free agent acquisition who was hurt all year. I think he had shoulder problems and I don't know what else. And he played a little in the postseason, but then I think it was back tightness or something. And in the year before, in 2024, he had hit 40 plus home runs, and he was our big signing, and he did nothing for us because he was hurt all year. So, and then we'll have George Springer, and I think he'll be 37 next year. So, should we expect some decline? Yeah, of course, but hard to expect him to have a year like he had this year when he drove in. I think he drove in. He hit 30 or just over 30 home runs, drove in well over 80. He will get MVP votes. George Springer will. He won't win MVP. The MVP, my guess, is going to be Cal Raleigh with the catcher for the Seattle Mariners, or it's going to be Aaron Judge, one of the two. My money's on Cal Raleigh, whatever the case. Whale is asking. He's got two comments up. Wales saying, I recall when low grade NHL teams used to play for the tie, icings galore. Yeah, it used to be in the NHL in a bygone era that games would end in a tie. If it was 4-4, third period ended, that's the game. When I was a kid growing up, we said that a tie was like kissing your sister. You didn't want a tie. But in the NHL, they used to have tie games. But now I still think there are teams that, basically play it safe because they don't want to, they want to get into overtime because then we get I call it a loser point. I don't think you should get any points when you lose a game, whether it be in regulation, overtime, or shootout. But then Whale is writing, want to talk about the ostriches? They are apparently gearing up to grind them up. Yeah, I think that's within days, is it not, that the Supreme Court is supposed to be um, rendering their decision as to the legality of the cull order that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, wants to enact. Haven't talked about that for a while, but that might be a topic for a video in the coming days. Because what I suspect will happen, if I look at my crystal ball, cracked and cloudy though it may be, I say that the Supreme Court of Canada is going to uphold the CFIA's right. They're going to uphold their decision to destroy these birds that they refused to test. That's the most infuriating part for me, is that they refuse to conduct any testing whatsoever on these birds. And as a matter of fact, the owners of Universal Ostrich Farms have been rejoined by the court system and threatened with thousands of dollars of fines if they would go and have a private lab conduct testing on them, because the last thing CFIA wants to find out is that these birds are 100% verifiably healthy and disease free and incapable of spreading anything. That would be the nightmare scenario. They want to go in and they want to take those birds out. Um, a lot of people seem to think that these birds may offer that there have been suggestions out there, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but the suggestion has been made that do these ostriches, do their eggs, could they culture antibodies in them? Would they offer something of a natural homeopathic type remedy to varying diseases? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see what happens with the ostriches. I know that a gentleman who I have met, Jim Kerr, was actually arrested, and I've seen him back on social media. So I'm assuming he, was probably is under some kind of court order. But he's from my area, and he drove I guess his bubble bus. Strange character, Jim. I met him a couple times. I met him at a couple protests when we were protesting the COVID insanity, and and then I met him also up at a business called Peter Burgers, Peterborough Burgers. So they call it Peter Burgers, and it was a restaurant up in Peterborough that that I frequented, or that I went to, that I patronized, because they didn't ask me for my private medical information in order to sit down and have a bite to eat. I found a few businesses that would, when I was, September 2021, when all of a sudden I found myself to be a social pariah because I wasn't willing to get injected with a pharmaceutical product that had only been worked on for a few months, that had no long-term safety profile whatsoever, you know, where, my knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry, I worked for a time, a very low level position with what is called a contract manufacturing organization. So often when Pfizer, Moderna, when these GSK, Merck, when the big pharma companies produce a medication or a drug or a compound of any description, they themselves, they don't have a factory producing it. Rather, what they do is they outsource the manufacture production to a CMO, contract manufacturing organization. And again, very low level employee. I'm not claiming to have any high level knowledge, but the one thing I was able to ascertain was that the protocols that have to be put in place, it takes a long time to nail down the manufacturing process, because they want to make sure that every unit coming off the production line is the same. The first unit is the same as the 1,000th, is the same as the 100,000th, as the same as the 1 millionth, and it has to be the same across varying locations, because when drug companies contract CMOs, quite often they are contracting more than one. And so they'll have a particular drug compound, whatever, coming off a production line, in Ontario, Canada, maybe down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, maybe in Europe somewhere, maybe, and each product has to be identical. And so I got I got a small degree of familiarity with what goes into nailing down that production process. And it's not something you can just snap your fingers and have ready in a few months or a few weeks. So how in the heck. And so that's why I wasn't willing to, there are a ton of reasons why I wasn't willing to risk taking that medical intervention. But at any rate, during that time in September of 2021, all of a sudden I found myself a social pariah. I couldn't go to a Tim Hortons and sit down and have a coffee. I could buy a coffee, but then you're not allowed to sit down here. You horrible unvaccinated person. You can't get on a plane. You can't get on a train. You can't work at this place. You can't do this, can't do that. And so when I found businesses, restaurants that were flouting the rules, that were willing to not ask for private medical information, and I found a number. I found Kelly Hale owned a restaurant in Kingston. It was called Jack Tuesday's Pub and Grill. I went there a number of times. There was Jackie, a woman who lives in Brighton here, owned a Wild Wing restaurant in Belleville, and they were not asking for proof of what. And same time I found one of these places, but most places, you know, they were all in. I went to Tyendinaga to a little roadside place, and I want to sit down and have, some eggs and bacon, a standard little breakfast thing. Well, you have to show proof of vaccination. I'm like, are you serious? Here? And then, oh yeah, anything for public safety. And I'm like, bye. And I've never been back in that establishment since. Drove me nuts. Um, and Whale is saying, and I think this is in respect to the ostriches, that the government has yet to make the valid supporting science available for anyone to peruse, for anyone to look at, go through, scan, read. Anyway, all right. So today we're now November 2nd. Little reminder, roll your clock back at 2 o'clock in the morning. Right now, where I am, Eastern time zone, it is now 1:15 a.m. As soon as that clock hits 2, that's when you go back to 1 a.m. So we're all going to get 1 extra hour of sleep tonight. I wish we would do away with switching the clocks, with falling back and springing forward. I would just like to stay on standard time or stay on daylight savings time. Pick one and stay with it. The way that they do, I believe Saskatchewan does not play the daylight savings standard time, daylight savings time game, and nor does Arizona, I believe. I believe those are the two North American jurisdictions that don't play that game. But anyway, welcome to my channel, Act One, a Canadian take on news events. This is what I do. This is one of the things I do. Live streams. Normally, I try to pick a topic, something that's hot, something that's happening, something that is a lot of conversation about, but there really isn't anything big right now aside from the Blue Jays. Uh, and Whale is telling me that there's another reason, another region that doesn't change the clocks. The Peace region, I think, is that the Peace River? The Peace region in BC, he's saying, does not change clocks either. And Whale, of course, is in British Columbia, so he would know. Um, and I knew, and he reaffirms what I said about Saskatchewan not changing their clocks. And Wales' comment to that is bravo. Yeah, no kidding. Um, at any rate, uh, Peace River. Okay, Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, and North. So I guess these are the areas in and around the Peace River. Peace River, Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, and North. These are areas in BC that do not play the swinging back and forth, and, jump, springing forward and falling back. But I do enjoy the fall back. It's nice to wake up. Oh gosh, already 10. Oh no, it's only 9. That's nice, especially given that tomorrow I'm very much wanting to go back to the church that I was attending before COVID started. And I was chagrined over the fact that they went to the church I was attending up until COVID hit, was very much playing along with all the rules. However, the pastor of that church has had his eyes wide open the entire time. He was eyes wide open, but the congregation, a lot of older members, a lot of people who think that the CBC News and CTV, that you can trust them. And so when what the news says, they believe. And so, and my friend, who's the pastor there, and I call him that. I call him a friend. We're not, I actually just went out, we sat down, we had an hour and a half long conversation about, a ton of things. And incidentally, this gentleman who I have an enormous respect for, he and I disagree on Israel. The Christian Reformed Church, which is what this denomination is, and I'm a member of that church, is a they adhere to a doctrine of supersessionism. That is to say that, and I want to present it in a steelman fashion, that the covenant promises that were given to Israel, that they were for the period up until the cross, and that now that we're on this side of the cross, that the Israel is still covenant and chosen. However, now the covenant resides within the body of Jesus Christ. And so those Israelites who accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you know, are basically still God's chosen. But again, a major qualifier being, those who are within the body of Christ. I disagree with Ryan on this, and we had an hour and a half long conversation that talked not just about that, but about a number of different things about the political situation. We cover everything, and we're pretty much lockstep on a lot of things except Israel. And what's nice is that I think Ryan, similar to myself, I am as my videos would indicate, am a big supporter of Israel. Israel, and when I say that, I mean the right of the people of Israel to exist and the right for the people of Israel, the nation, to defend themselves. Um, well, with that being said, I'm open to listening to the other side, and that's what I find about Ryan. He's open to listening to my point of view, and he's willing to acknowledge when, okay, that is a valid point. God's covenant promises to the land of Israel, as evidenced in Ezekiel 36. When was that fulfilled? And Ryan admits, that there are no easy answers and that they're good questions. And he likewise hits me with a lot more good questions because he's been to seminary. And then Whale is making the point with respect to me. I was saying how this congregation went along, not everyone, but a lot of older people. They get their marching orders from CBC News, and Whale is saying that the TV is mind control programming. And then Whale goes on to say um, that he has never had a chance to monopolize the chat like this before. And he's taking advantage. No worries. Actually, you kept me rambling on. If you hadn't been here, this would have been a 10, 15, 20-minute video. That's about as long as I can go without some engagement interaction to springboard, you know, get me thinking, talking about other things. You brought up the The time change, you brought up the ostriches. It's fantastic. It's what I love about doing the live streams and hoping to grow the channel, but we'll see. At any rate, if you made it all the way to 50 minutes and you're not subscribed to my channel, why not? What are you doing? No, it's your choice. But if you will subscribe, I appreciate it. I see I have a few thumbs up already. They help. Anything to help boost the channel's profile within YouTube. But I'm starting to lose my voice. I was working today. I worked 12 to 9. I had to miss the first hour. I missed Bichette's big 3-run home run that almost held up. Yeah. Wales writing, smash that sub button. Yeah, what you've been watching me for how long? You haven't subbed? Get away, go. Gotta have some fun in this world. Tomorrow is Sunday. So if you're at all inclined, go out and find a church and listen to the words from this book. Let's do something I like to do every now and again, just kind of flip around and see where does my finger land me. I'm in Romans 12 and Romans chapter 12. And it says, I appeal to you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So often, I think, this is one of the verses from whence we hear that Christians are to be in the world, but not of the world. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. I heard a great little snippet. Vodi Bachman, who only just recently passed away, and given the amount of travel he's done, he's an American who started a Christian university, I believe, in Zimbabwe, formerly what used to be known as Rhodesia. And he passed away only recently. And I don't even think he was as old as I am. I think he was in his in my ballpark, late 50s. Passed away suddenly, another sudden death. And given the fact that he traveled so extensively, in order to travel, you know what you had to do. Um, I just found out an older gentleman I work with has an autoimmune condition that's affecting his brain with a form of an autoimmune condition that has it's like encephalitis. And I know that this gentleman I worked with, older than I am, in his 70s, still working incredibly fit and healthy, yachting, you know, still working part-time, just work, 2, 3 days a week. And now he's been hit with this autoimmune condition. But I also know that Dave, every 6 months, was whating. And, whatever his doctor told him, that's what he believed. And, you know, a scary notion. I don't want to be hit with a strike by community standards. So I'll just open-endedly ask the question, can a doctor be wrong? Can a doctor make a mistake? Anyway, God bless everyone. I'll end my videos the way I like to have them. And Whale is channeling Danny, who's on here quite frequently. And for Danny, he's putting up Jesus is King. Well, he's not. He didn't actually. He just gave him a little credit. That's what Danny. Jesus is the King. He's the King of King and the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the name to which every tongue shall confess, the name to which every knee shall bow. Whether you believe in him now or not, I know that the king is coming back, and regardless of whether individuals acknowledge Christ as Lord or not, they will bow the knee and they will confess with their tongues that he is Lord when it's too late, sadly, for many. But at any rate, I'll end it the way I like to so many times. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, may he grant you peace. If you can find yourself a church that reads out of this Bible, whatever version it be, King James, English Standard Revised, New Living Translation, there are too many. But what's the best translation of the Bible? It's the one you're reading. So if you're hearing the word, all is good. God bless, and we'll see you in a few nights. Keep an eye out for my content. I'm pre-recording some videos and uploading them now periodically, and you'll always know that if you're subscribed. So we'll talk to you later. Thanks again, Whale. You were awesome tonight, and I appreciate it. Cheers.